Hi, I'm Joe with Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and in this episode, we're going to unbox a new product by Army Painter, the Wargamers Edition Extra Large Wet Palette. This should be an awesome product. Let's take a good look. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. A couple of days back, Will from my awesome sponsor Torchlight Games and Hobbies contacted me and said he wanted to send over a new wet palette for review. Now, I didn't expect this, but I did know that this product was coming out, so of course I jumped at the chance. Army Painter recently has been impressing the miniature painting world with tons of new products, and I've been satisfied with my previous wet palette from them, so naturally I wanted to check this new one out. In this video, I'm going to review this new palette, as well as go over some reasons why you might want to use a wet palette yourself. Finally, I'll give a verdict on whether you should rush out to get a hold of one of these. Let's get to it. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is committed to bringing its viewers the best in miniature building content. I would really appreciate it if you would consider helping the channel in one of two ways. The first way is to leave a one-time donation by making a super thanks comment. The other is by considering joining our Patreon. Our Patreon community is growing all the time, and it offers tons of perks. Thanks for your time. And now back to the episode. Opening the shipping box, we see a pretty nice package that tells us about the product. Of course, the package isn't really all that important, but I did see that it includes 50 hydro sheets and 2 sponges. That's a lot of supplies. Even if you paint a couple of hours a day like I do, this amount of supplies will last a good long time. And of course, I expect that they'll sell refills, so this product is definitely not a gimmick, but an investment for a serious miniature artist. Opening it up, we see something interesting right away. This is not just a wet palette. There's a regular palette in here as well, with no less than 30 paint wells. The previous Army Painter palette didn't have this. Now, I have to be honest here. A wet palette is useful, but since the launch of speed paints, my previous wet palette has gone from something I use daily to something that I use occasionally. This is because speed paints have become my main painting product, and they don't handle thinning with water very well, so they're not suitable for use on a wet palette surface. This new hard palette, though, will be perfect. The wet palette itself requires assembly. First you lay down the sponge layer and moisten it with water. Then the hydro paper goes over top of that. With the one I got, I found the sponge was strangely too large. It wrapped up the sides a bit. I'm not sure if this was intentional, and it really made no difference. The hydro papers fit well, but it does take a few minutes to smooth these down over the sponge. However, having used other wet palettes previously, I know this is normal. Here I will admit, though, that I was rushing the filming to get this review ready, and I left wrinkles in the hydro paper. Other than having a cosmetic effect, though, this really has no bearing on the palette's use. While we're still on this topic, I'd like to mention that I made the sponge too wet. This is kind of normal for a wet palette, though. You have to work at getting it moist enough to hydrate the paint, but not cause it to run. Neither of these concerns are real issues. As I said, I was rushing to set this up, and these faults were my own, and they really don't have any effect on my workflow. The real plus of this product is plain to see when I put my old wet palette next to the new one. The new one is twice the size. This is a welcome difference. I liked my old wet palette fine, but if I could complain about it, it was that the surface was just a little too small for one hydro sheet to cover all the colors and mixes in a single painting project. This new one Has an ample space though, so I think I can kiss that problem goodbye. So that covers the components out of the box. But if you're unfamiliar with wet palettes, you might want to know what this product offers over any other option for spreading and mixing paint. The answer here is longevity. We all know that when you pour out your paint on your work surface, you're now racing against the clock to use it before it dries. A wet palette, however, offsets this. The moisture in the sponge penetrates through the hydropaper and keeps the paint fresh. If you need to walk away, all you need to do is put the lid and elastic back on, and your product should stay workable for a long time, possibly even days. One thing to keep in mind here is that the downstream effect is you waste less paint and end up saving money as a result. The only real drawback to this is that it can be tricky trying to keep your sponge moisture at the right point to hydrate the paint, but not actually thin it too much. Of course, if you're one of those artists that likes very thin paints, or does a lot of glazes, then this extra moisture is actually really useful though. So now we've talked about the product and what a wet palette does. So I guess I need to give you a verdict on whether you should go rush out to Torchlight or any other friendly local game store and get the Army Painter Wargamers Edition wet palette. And to this, I'll say, it kind of depends. Will a palette make you a better painter? Honestly, no. Practice is the only option to do that. So if you're on a budget and can't decide what to get next, I'd say just buy more paints or quality brushes. Army Painter has you covered there, no problem. But if you're past this point and looking for the extra edge to make your hobby workflow even more user-friendly, then this is a great option. Even more so if you do large batch paint jobs, because when life gets in the way, you can just put the lid back on the palette, go walk the dog, or deal with whatever else you have to do, and come back and pick up where you left off, with no fuss. The efficiency this offers and savings on wasted paint will make the palette worth its weight in gold to you under these circumstances. So there you have it, my look at a really nifty product from the inventive minds at Army Painter. I hope you found it useful. I'll be back next week with more miniature painting, model building, and diorama content. See you then. If you'd like to know more about Army Painter speed paints, please watch this video, or consider watching this other video instead. Thanks for watching, and as always, remember to keep building life in miniature.